host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Hinderocker. What's up, Magic Mike?
Not much. Just on vacation and still recording a podcast. That's dedication.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't going to record, and then I was like, screw that, we're recording.
Yeah, so just made it happen.
Yeah, so it's episode 135. Mike is joining me from Chicago, and I'm up in my man cave doing it where we normally record. So, should be a good episode. This week, as many people know, we're talking about Doomblade. So, it's real relevant, up-to-date topic, but I think you guys will enjoy it.
I think the topic is still relevant, even if the card is not.
You're right. Let's get into our sponsor. You can check out our sponsor at Oasis Games. You can find them at OasisCCG.com and MTGOasis.com. You get 15% off of every order by using the code CCMTG at checkout.
I think just your first order.
Oh, yeah, just your first one. Every order you can use the code Would That Be Good and get 5% off, though, and that's pretty good.
I mean, that's still pretty great.
Yeah.
But 15%, we don't want to put Oasis out of business.
Yeah. They're already really good prices, really great place to buy cards. I was looking at their ratings today. They have a 4.4 on Facebook, a 4.8 on Google. Like, they have really good ratings from customers.
And if you look through the ratings, the low ones are strange. I think I spent an afternoon doing that once, and I was very confused as some of the...
The one on Yelp, they have one bad review on Yelp that is very confusing. Fun story, the guy that left the review, his friend got banned from Oasis for stealing cards, so he gave them a bad review. And he's like, my friend's never stolen cards. And I was like, actually, he stole a Volakut deck from me back in, 2012. So, yes, he has.
Yeah, I mean, not the most unbiased reviews.
So. Yeah. So that's their worst review that they have, and it's just not true. So you should check out Oasis Games at OasisGamesSLC.com, OasisCCG.com, and MTGOasis.com. You can also support the podcast directly by going to Patreon.com/CCMTG. We actually are recording another podcast this Thursday, specifically for our Patreon listeners as we hit our goal. To do an extra podcast for you guys, but we'll go in depth on the decks that we're playing, why we're playing them, what we like, what we don't like, how stupid Manny is for playing what he's playing, how stupid Michael is for not playing Collected Company, how smart Casey is for just playing the best deck, and how dumb I am for always playing green cards that aren't that good.
It sounds like we don't even need to record anymore. We covered it all.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a good podcast. I hope that it's probably going to be shorter, around 30, 45 minutes. But it'll be really in-depth on just our beliefs on the format and what we're playing, rather than this in-depth thing onto how the format looks and what we want to do with it. So, really exciting thing, and hope you guys enjoy that. We also got 2 new patrons this week. Shout out to Austin and Luis. It's Luis or Luis. He actually told me, and I forgot. I apologize. But top 8 GP competitor. I know that. And these guys both donated. In fact, Austin put a donation in for $6 a month. Noticed we weren't at the 150 and then moved it to 7 to get us to the 150. And then...
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and I was like, all right.
Yeah, we get to record more. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's so major shout out to those 2. You can start donating anything you want, $1 all the way up to $1 million. Anything you see fit, we would appreciate.
I mean, $1 million a month would be a large commitment, but I have to say, we would not say no.
We would not say no, and it would go to good use.
Would it?
Yeah.
$1 million a month?
I feel like we could use $1 million a month to make really great Magic content.
I think if I had $1 million a month, I'd hire someone better than me to make even better Magic content.
I didn't say that wouldn't happen, but yeah. I'm just saying, you, Casey, and Manny, and I wouldn't have to work anymore.
I mean, that is true. Owen Turtenwald, Paulo Vitor grudge match.
Yeah, we would have
every day.
We would have great Magic content.
So I mean, if you have a spare $1 million a month lying around.
Hey, we're not picky. If you want to donate $250,000 a month, we'll take it. But yeah, shout out to those guys. Shout out to all the patrons. We're really excited to record this extra podcast with you, and we look forward to future awesome content. We already launched a bunch of it early. We're doing the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check that out. So thank you so much. Let's move on to the bulk of this podcast. We want to move on to our section of #AlwaysImproving, where every week on the podcast we talk about how we improved at Magic. Man, I did a lot of Magic this week.
I'm happy to hear that, because I feel like when you felt disappointed with yourself, it's mostly related to not playing often enough.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way this week. I was disappointed with some of my results, but I played a lot of Magic. So I played at a PPTQ. I lost a win and end for top 8, playing Judd midrange. I missideboarded, played bad, didn't play that great, but I really liked my deck. How I improved, though, was not getting discouraged by losing to the deck. I typically will get discouraged if I lose to a deck multiple times and feel like I had a good matchup against it. And I still feel like the matchup isn't as bad as my record was against it. In fact, I still think it's good for me, but I just was not prepared for what they were doing at the same level that I thought I was. So this week I just rallied and not rallied the ancestor. I rallied and I went back to a deck that I gave up on, and I tuned it and really like it. So now I have like quite a few decks at my disposal that I actually really like playing right now. And so that's exciting. I didn't give in to anger or frustration or tilt. I just rallied and I'm really excited about this weekend. Can't decide if I'm going to play standard or limited, but either way, I'm excited to play Magic. And not tilting is something that was kind of my goal in the last 2 weeks. So it was great to like have that Magic not tilt me this week.
That's awesome. It's really fun when you realize that you're enjoying the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way ultimately to get better.
How about you? How did you improve at Magic this week, Mike?
I moved off of playing my pet card, Collected Company, in favor of playing green-white tokens, which I thought was the stronger overall deck. I've put up such good results with Collected Company lately that I was a little bit scared to do so, but I'm happy that, I pushed myself out of my comfort zone at least as much as you can when you audible onto the best deck in the format.
Well, there you go. You still top 8'd, right?
Well,
yes, you did.
I did top 8.
That's what matters. You
Right.
You could have won the tournament, but you had a wedding to go to.
I went to my friend's wedding instead, which was very beautiful. And I did not anger my girlfriend by trying to play Magic over going to a wedding. So, all in all, it was a good weekend.
Yeah. Shout out to Casey and Manny. So Casey's currently working out. So we were supposed to record on Mother's Day with Manny, and we didn't actually realize that it was Mother's Day. So I want to be clear that like Casey and Manny are still part of the podcast. But Saturday, while we're at the PPTQ, I was like, "Hey, Casey, you're gonna have those power rankings ready tonight?" Or tomorrow, and he's like, "No." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, I'm spending the whole day with my mom." I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "'Cause I'm a good son, dum-dum." It's like, "What? Oh, it's May. It's May. It means Mother's Day." So, so that's why we're recording on another day, and that's why Manny's not here, because he's taking his now wife out to dinner tonight.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
Don't anger your new wife.
Exactly. Especially when she's pregnant.
That's 2 good reasons.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there.
You don't want to anger your unborn child either.
Yeah. So they're still on the show. They're just not here this week. But Patreon participation. So every week on the show, we obviously invite Patreons to participate in the show in any way that they'd like, asking questions, submitting deck lists, whatever they feel like. And this week we got a question before I even posted the Patreon participation post, and I was like, I want to talk about this. I feel like this is.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting.
Do you want to go ahead and read it for me?
Yeah. Hey Spencer, I'm a listener and Patreon of the show. I really enjoy your guys' podcast because it not only helps players become better through the advice that you give, but you guys also do a great job of presenting Magic in a way that is relatable through emotion and how it helps you grow not only as players of the game, but as players in daily life. I really enjoyed the episode this week, and I had some questions regarding the topic of making the correct plays. I started playing Magic at Thursday Night Standard when cons rotated in, and I've been playing about once a week on Thursdays since then, but have moved to the modern format as well. I took down a GPT about a month ago, and it was the second one I've ever played. I feel like my potential as a player is fairly high, with my results being very good. When I compare myself to players at my LGS, I think I stack up pretty well, and there are decent players been playing much longer than I have. Anyways, my question is, when deciding on the choices I have during every match, I still find myself not knowing if the choices I'm making are the absolute 51% correct choices. I'm winning and performing well, but I feel that my sense of not knowing is making me believe that my results may be due to luck. Is there a moment when we as players finally realize, yes, that was the absolute correct play, or is there always a sense of doubt in every match you play? Sorry if this was lengthy, but I kind of had to give you some background to my situation. Have a good one, and thanks if you read this.
Obviously, I read everything everybody sends us, so I'm really dedicated to it. So first of all, this is pretty big. This
is a really hard question.
So I think that we kind of covered it, but maybe didn't cover it enough last week. So last week we talked about always improving and how it works and how it equates. And I think the answer to the question is always improving. So I don't think that there's this magical click moment. I don't think it exists. And that's why we talked about how, like, it's all small incremental things that you have to be doing all the time.
I totally agree with that. I think when you're looking at this kind of thing, some of it is going to have to be by feel. You're not always going to be able to just, like, pull out a calculator and start, doing statistics at the table. So you have to find sort of – there's a combination of, reading your opponent for what the correct play is, understanding, what they've gone through already, what outs you have available, depending on, it's very situational. But I don't think there's ever going to be a moment where you say, "Oh, now I get it. Magic is easy. I'm always going to make the right play." Or I've figured out the magic formula, and now I will not make mistakes anymore.
Yeah, I think that the huge thing here is that it's about reflection. So you're going to have to make a choice. And then after that choice is made, if you go talk to your friends after the match, like, here's the situation that happened. What do you think? Did I do this right? Did I do this wrong? And that reflection is going to be, that's going to be it. That's going to be what decides.
Right, and I think sometimes when we talk about this, we maybe get a little too into the kind of statistics of it all, when really a lot of the time, I mean, I've had this experience a lot lately between playing with and against green-white. You're often playing around either Avacyn, Secure the Wastes, or Dromoka's Command, playing against that deck. And one of the things you'll try to think through when you have a situation where they have enough mana up to cast any of those spells is, okay, so what have they held up consistently throughout the game? So maybe they've been holding up green-white for a while, trying to find an opportunity to cast a Dromoka's Command. But you have to also think about, okay, well, they've been holding it up for a while, but was there a spot where maybe they should have cast one and they didn't? That could be a tell that maybe they don't have one. Or same thing for Avacyn or Secure the Wastes, right? If you ultimate priced something last turn and they didn't flash in Avacyn, it seems relatively unlikely that they actually have one, even if they've been holding up the mana to represent one. So you have a combination of trying to figure out what your opponent has based on how the game is played out to that point, and then in addition to that, just trying to figure out what you can beat. If playing around Avacyn is going to make you lose, don't worry about it, right? I mean, if you're never going to be able to beat an Avacyn at any point in the game, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to play around.
Yep. I actually had that exact moment last night where I was testing against Ryan, one of our patrons, and I was like, I played around Avacyn, and then the next turn I was like, I shouldn't have done that. Play Chandra, attack. And the thing is that if it's the same thing happens, like, let's say that your opponent does play around Avacyn and you don't have it. Like, you should just keep making them play around Avacyn.
Right.
Like,
once you choose not to go into it once,
yeah,
you're not going into it until you have to. And at that point, even if they didn't have one before, they might have just drawn one.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes, it's about having a feel for, so if I just play around this indefinitely, am I still going to be able to actually win this game? So
this is what I mean. That's why there's this evaluation period afterwards. You have to make a decision. You don't have all day. Magic is too complicated to know what a 51 and 49% play is. There's too many things going on. You can't actually know. What you have to do is get good at making your best guess, and
Right.
and then evaluating with your friends afterwards. Was I right? Because that's how you're going to get to the point where you know these decisions. We're not all John
Your reads are good.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because if you're good at figuring out what your opponent has, your quick reads are going to be, I mean, not perfect, but for the most part good enough to help you not play around cards they don't have while playing around the cards they do.
Sure, but even sometimes there's plays where there are plays where like it's not even what your opponent has in their hand. It could be what they have in their deck. It could be like all kinds of things.
Sure.
That don't even involve reading your opponent as much as like some decks don't care about your opponent, and you still have to figure out the correct line to get you to like what's in your deck, like, and all these things. And there's a lot of complicated things that are happening.
Right.
You have to figure out like some insane combo decks or things like that. And the important things are just to like practice makes perfect. Like it's kind of what PV says every time he comes on our podcast, but like it's the truth.
I totally see that. I find the other thing is that when you're really familiar with a format and you've played a lot of playtest games in a matchup, you sort of understand, okay, so when I playtested this matchup, how did the games play out where I was winning and how did they play out where I was losing? You know, so if the game is going to be about my opponent having Avacyn or not having Avacyn, is there a way I can, you know, like mitigate its impact, or is this just the only thing that's going to matter in the matchup?
Sure. So I hope that answered your question. I hope that everybody enjoyed a little more in depth on that specific aspect. Let's go on to. By the way, I'm with Casey. By the way, I do believe there's a correct play all the time.
I can see that, but I also think that it's not realistic to expect you to be perfect on figuring it out. So
I don't think that I expect to be perfect at it. I'm not John Finkel, but I do believe in it.
Right. No, but I think that's a positive thing overall, because it means that the correct answer is never to throw your hands up in the air and say, I give up. It's always to keep trying to get better, trying to understand what's happening better, trying to figure out, you know, what your opponent's representing, what your outs are. It means there's always something you can do to become better.
Yeah, this week we want to try and get better by talking about Standard again. We didn't get to talk about Standard last week. There's been 3 GPs and a Classic that have been going on, and tons of decks. And I'm just going to say this right now, Bant Company is not on this list.
You know, that is a little surprising to some extent. I think I've still seen it popping up a lot online, and I still think it's a reasonable choice. But to me, it seems like a lot of the things that people liked about Bant, you still get out of green-white. But
and you really get out of 4-color.
But you sort of split the aspects of the deck, and the 4-color rights deck and the green-white tokens deck both borrow things, at least in my opinion, from Bant Company, but are perhaps both better decks at this point in the format, at least.
This deck would not have even made the top 8 decks, by the way. Bant Company would not have been in the top 8 decks.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was in 9th place. So.
And yet, I still think you could play that and feel good about it. So
I think so too.
Kind of a sweet format.
Yeah, it is. No, it's an amazing format. We actually have a tie for 5th, 6th. We have Humans and Naya Tokens. Naya Tokens actually took down 2 of the 4 events.
Huh.
It's funny.
It must be doing well, because a deck that I'm not even sure I could come up with an exact list for being tied for 5th.
It won one of the GPs and it won the Classic.
Sure.
And honestly, I have played with this deck a lot because it was one of the original decks from my testing for the format. And I put Naya Tokens. They're all different variants of Naya midrange, but the card that's the most important to me that this deck gets to play is Oath of Chandra. This deck is just sweet. Can we just be real here? This deck gets to play Oath of Chandra, Arlen Court, Chandra Flamecaller, Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, Nahiri, Nissa, other Nissa.
That's a lot.
And then I think the one from the GP, I'm not sure what of those cards that deck was playing, but I know that it was another quote-unquote tokens deck. And these tokens deck, I don't know why they call these decks tokens. They're really Super Friends decks, both the green-white one and the Naya one. But yeah, it looks like the Grand Prix. Let's look.
The one from
Tokyo was one
Tokyo,
also.
that's what I'm looking at as
Yeah,
well.
that one was just 3 Nahiris and a Chandra for Planeswalkers, but it also played 3 Nissa the Vastwood Seer. So there's, but like.
Sure. No, this is really more of a creature-based deck than anything else.
Yeah. Just lots of Naya mid-range strategies did well.
I think what you're really seeing is the power of Archangel Avacyn in these style decks and in the green-white deck as well. Just extremely powerful card.
I think that the one from the classic didn't play that, and I think that its strategy was a little bit different. I think that what the important thing that you get out of Naya is it might give you an edge against the green-white version.
Interesting.
Because I mean, you get Radiant Flames and.
It seems like it allows you to. I mean, obviously, just playing a third color opens up a lot more potential options for you, but I can see that it looks like in the deck from GB Tokyo, it opens up the combo of Sylvan Advocate and Needle Spires, which is pretty disgusting if you've ever had the opportunity to do that. And this also looks like a deck in which Nahiri could be absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, this deck is playing Avacyn, obviously, which is great because when it comes back to your hand, getting to make your creatures indestructible again is obviously super powerful, but it's also playing a main deck Linvala as well as 2 main deck Dragonlord Atarkas, which getting those off in Nahiri has got to feel good.
Yeah, I think that there was also another top 8 for this deck at GP Toronto, if I'm not mistaken.
I remember that.
And that one also was like just basically green-white just splashing red.
Yeah, I think that one was splashing mostly for Chandra, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it looks like just Chandra and Radiant Flames.
Yeah.
So, Naya definitely a deck that you could be playing. I think that somebody's gonna figure out a Naya list that's pretty good because there's 3 of them. So one of them's like there's 3 top 8s within like 3 GPs in a classic. 2 of them wins. Like there's something.
Sure.
There's something here.
This is the kind of deck where I think if your mana is cooperating with you, this deck is absurdly powerful.
Yeah.
Just looking down this list, the cards are great.
Yeah. Humans, 16 points also. No surprises here. Humans is just already a thing in the meta game. I think you get to punish people for being dirtily, but I don't think that people are dirtling right now, which is why humans is dropping.
Yeah, I think that the way humans decks are constructed right now, you're also just pretty vulnerable to sweepers, and I'm not really sure what the way to fix that is. I mean, you punish people who are stumbling on mana, but I don't think there are a whole lot of really greedy decks right now, and I think that green-white and even Bant, both of those decks are kind of fast and punishing enough that there aren't a whole lot of decks that aren't casting many spells.
Yeah,
the control decks are very proactive.
Surprisingly, only coming in with 1 more point. I actually didn't think that this was going to make the list until it came in the final stretch. Was Green-Black Aristocrats.
So I think this deck is great. It's a deck I've personally had a lot of success with, but my testing has shown that it's quite soft to the 4-color Cryptolith Right deck, and it probably has a worse green-white tokens matchup than the 4-color Cryptolith Right deck does. So when you're bad in this pseudo-mirror and you're worse against the best deck in the format, the question is just whether or not that's really a justifiable
decision
deck to be playing at this point.
Yeah. I think Green-Black Aristocrats is probably going to stay in this format for a long time. I think that there's going to be a subsect of players that just wants this deck over 4-color rights.
That being said, this deck is extremely powerful. It's more explosive even than the 4-color rights deck.
Yeah.
And its best draws are very hard to interact with.
Yeah. I think this deck's here to stay. I think that it's the synergy deck that is just in my opinion, this is the most consistent deck in Standard.
I think this would also not be a bad choice if you just had a lot of time to kill and really wanted to devote yourself to practicing and playing one deck perfectly. This is probably the deck that gains the most from
either this or the 4-color Cryptolith deck. They're both incredibly challenging to play, and if you're playing them at a really high level, you're definitely at a big advantage over the rest of the room.
Coming in in third with that almost. I mean, this was in second for a long time, and that surprised me was Grixis control. These Goblin Dark Dweller Grixis decks are tearing it up.
So when I was talking earlier about even control decks being forced to be more proactive, this is what I was talking about. I mean, these are control decks only in the broadest sense of the word. I mean, these are playing generally 4 Kalitas, 4 Jace, 4 Dark Dwellers, and 2, sometimes 3 Dragonlord Silumgars.
Oh, I didn't see any in the entirety that I looked at that played that many. I did see some with 2.
Okay. I mean, the creature count is very high. The cheap spell, cheap removal. I mean, these are not decks that are trying to go to turn.
This is Grixis midrange. People need to name things control or aggro.
I mean, it's a control deck in this format.
The word midrange is a dirty word, apparently. We can't have nice things as midrange players. They just tell us that we can't, so I've accepted it. I give up. Abzan control, Abzan aggro. I don't care.
But, I mean, this is a very proactive deck. This is not the kind of deck that's trying to sit back, counter a bunch of spells. This is trying to, slam discard spell, removal, Dark Dwellers, flashback removal, kill you.
They're not even playing negates out of the board, and the reason they're not is they tap out so often that there's no reason to.
Yeah, this is not a deck that holds up mana well. This is a deck that's trying to curve... transgress the mind, like Fiery Impulse into Transgress the Mind, into 3-mana removal spell, into Kalitas, into Dark Dwellers, flashback removal spell, close the game out.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Why aren't we just all doing that? This is the deck that, I've been impressed with. I played a little bit with it today because I was like, well, if this deck is as good as everybody says it is. I actually went 2-0 against this deck at the PPTQ with Jund, and I was like, man, I'm playing the better version of this deck. But apparently the results disagree with me because everybody's playing this one.
I think it's a challenging deck to play, and it's a deck that has some flexibility in exactly how you build it. One of the things I really like about this format is just that I think to this point the linear decks are pretty challenging, and everything that isn't especially linear, there's a lot of slots that you could mess around with if you felt the need to.
Coming in at second point with only 1 point more, 27 points is the 4-color rights deck. I don't know. I think this deck is not as good as its results, but I know that Mike Segrist actually listed our top 3 decks as his top 3 decks. So
this is a funny deck. I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of fragile. If you watch the final of the GP, it's not great against sweepers. I would say markedly worse than the black-green deck. The flip side is... this deck does not care about Kalitas, as the infinite combo is not broken up by Kalitas.
I actually think that Goggles Ramp looks really, really good for this format.
Interesting.
Specifically, you have to change it a little bit, but I think that Goggles Ramp is probably favored against all 3 of the top 3 decks, and about 50-50 against 4th.
My impression of the Goggles Ramp deck was that it was not especially good against green-white tokens.
Yeah, so... we tested it all night last night. I updated the list to actually fix the Gideon problem, and I think I achieved it. So we'll see this weekend. I might play Standard and play Goggles Ramp, because I hated Goggles Ramp, because I was like, I don't know how you beat a Gideon!
But that doesn't seem like an unsolvable problem, certainly. The main thing that the Cryptolith Right deck is very good at doing is just smashing green-white.
I was going to say, I feel like Cryptolith Right is, up this high, because green-white comes in at number 1 with 58 points, double both rights and Grixis.
So what I really like about the green-white deck is that it is extremely proactive. Its best hands on the play feel almost unbeatable. I mean, this was what I played this weekend, and I had a number of games where I went Oath of Nissa into Sylvan Advocate into Nissa, Planeswalker into Gideon. And, I mean, I don't know how you lose doing that on the play.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane. So
it's a good stuff deck that also has a lot of synergy. And when you start getting into that, you get to play, 8 Planeswalkers, plus Secure the Wastes, plus Westvale Abbey. Oh, and just in case that isn't good enough, 4 Archangel Avacyn.
We do need to say, because we did say that we would talk about this on this podcast, I didn't know that White-Black would not make the power rankings when I said we would talk about it this week. So we did mention that, like, Soren won a GP. Manny's not here. That's actually why he's not here. Let's be honest.
He's off celebrating. He's off.
No, he hates it more than I do.
Oh, interesting.
He's just avoiding having to say that Soren won a GP.
Well, Soren is a nice curve card. I mean, being able to remove something and gain life, it's the kind of card that's just, like, reasonable in every matchup, even if it's never insane.
I think the important thing here is that Soren is probably, like, something you need against the token stack. You need something to, like, have an impact on the game that late, and I don't think that Linvala does it, so you can't play Linvala in that slot.
Sure. I mean, my impression watching Seth Manfield on Black-White this weekend was just that it lines up really well against the Cryptolith right decks. I mean, those decks have a very, very tough time with Black-White.
Yeah.
And it's good at sort of going over the top of what Green-White is doing. It still is good at threatening, it has all the kind of secure the wastes shenanigans going on, but it's very good at, both if you want to, playing Duress or Transgress the Mind to take out an early Planeswalker, and just not getting caught up in the whole game of trying to play to the board against... Because, I mean, really, let's be honest, if you're trying to play to the board against Green-White tokens, it's not going to go well for you.
No.
Right? I mean, that deck is really good at just flooding the board with 2/2s and 3/3s, and
then they become 5/5s, and
sure, just getting you eventually.
Yeah,
right? It's not always fast, but it'll get there.
I think that Green-White is like best cards deck, and so it's a puzzle to solve. I don't believe best cards deck. I don't think it's good for Magic for best cards deck to be the best deck for very long.
It usually isn't the best deck for very long, but what I will say is if you can't figure out what you want to play, Green-White is a very reasonable choice.
Yeah.
It punishes players who aren't prepared.
Yeah. And I think that somebody will figure out, I mean, people are already trying to figure out how to beat Green-White. And I don't think it's unbeatable. I think the 4-color Rights deck beats it. I think that there are many decks that can beat this deck, and it's just about solving what you want to do and how you want to attack this metagame. But, man, are there a lot of sweet decks. What would you play this week and why?
Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, going off of last weekend, I would be happy sleeving up Green-White again. Deck felt great. It didn't feel especially challenging or punishing, but I still felt like there were enough situations where I had choices to give me some control over the results of the games. But if I decided I didn't want to play that, or I thought it might have too big a target on its head, I think I would play Grixis.
Okay. For me, I think this format's great, and I think there's so many decks. Like you, I have multiple. I would play Grixis, Jund, or Godless Ramp this week. I don't know. I think that there's like tons of ways that you can attack this meta, and it's really exciting. So I think that Grixis. I understand that some people think that Grixis is like the up and comer. It's going to take over. It's going to be the answer to. I mean, as atypical, some mid-range black deck. Usually it's green-black X, but like some mid-range black deck's gonna come up and be like, all right, you can't just be
the good. Black cards in this format are really good.
Yeah, and all it's saying is you can't be this deck. You can't be green-white tokens. Like this isn't something you get to do. We can't all just be the best cards all the time. And
I mean, one of the things that's sweet about this format is I would be perfectly happy to play any of the top 10 or so decks in this format. They're fun.
Other than white-black, I agree.
Format. Even white-black in the right metagame could definitely be a good choice.
That white-black Eldrazi deck that went 15-0, I would play that.
Yeah. I think there's sort of a little shuffle going on, and as long as Reflector Mage is being kept down a little bit, Thought-Knot Seeker is a card that I really like.
Yeah.
So I certainly wouldn't mind it either.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the training grounds this week. We're going to talk about Dying to Doomblade. So you're a non-black creature, so too damn mana, you're dead. You're not playable. Sorry, Mike, you suck.
I mean, I think you have to find balance, right, in a format.
No,
It's very format dependent.
no. If it dies to Doomblade or Declaration in Stone or gets bounced by Reflector Mage or any of these things, it's not playable, Mike.
So the only card we're playing now is Goblin Dark Dwellers?
No, it's just spell. You have to play spells. So this is something that I hear again and again and again and again and again and again every single format. Like week 3 of this format, I was in the store and Matt Kling and Casey Bloodworth were telling me you can't play Creatures, Declaration in Stone is too good. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, come on, guys.
I mean, that's a high standard.
Like, you serious?
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to find a format where removal spells just aren't played.
It's too powerful. You can't play it. And, you know, it's funny, in the constructive criticism testing team group, I was like, hey, I want to play Ramp. And people were like, can't play it. You know, Declaration in Stone is too good. Just exiles your World Breakers and your Ulamog, so you can't play it. And it was like, by the end of brewing my deck and testing it, Michael, my best matchup was the best Declaration in Stone deck at the time.
Sure.
So, it's Doomblade, Declaration in Stone, Reflector Mage, Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt. These efficient answers to creatures.
Right.
They're not a... Why do we fall for it again and again? Over and over and over again.
Well, I think, at least my impression, especially I've had this happen with Declaration in Stone a couple of times, it's frustrating because you'll be playing a game of Magic and just get randomly absolutely blown out by a 2-mana sorcery.
Well,
and it just feels so bad.
It does feel bad, but you spent 7 mana on a card, right?
Right.
So anything that's going to kill it is going to feel like a blowout. And these things that we're talking about, these declarations, these Reflector Mages, these Lightning Bolts, these Doomblades, like Doomblade, it's not a end of a format. It's a beginning of a format. And it's a puzzle, not a problem.
I think that's exactly it. It's finding, okay, so, I mean, maybe Declaration in Stone being an option changes a little bit. Like, maybe you don't want to be playing a strategy that is going to just put out a ton of the same token, and that's going to be your only way to win. Yeah. Or maybe Hangerback Walker loses some of its value because it doesn't line up particularly well against either Reflector Mage or Declaration in Stone. But I think, in general, in Magic, when you try to think about things as, you know, oh, there are frameworks that you don't like, rather than this is just the way it is and we're going to think about how to beat it. I mean, Magic to me is fun when you're winning. And the best way to win is to think about, you know, so this isn't a problem, it's just how it is.
Yeah, I think that something that's important to notice, like, is when you look back on, like, things that, like arguably the most powerful cycle of creatures of all time were the Titans.
Sure.
And the Titans were, like, I'm just going to I'm going to read them because I think that there will be some people who don't know what they do.
Okay.
So I'm just going to pull these up. And we're just going to start with, you know, the good old, oh, that's the wrong kind of Titan.
we can even just start with the best one.
Well, what's the best one?
Primeval Titan.
So Primeval Titan's a pretty good one. We can start with that one. It's green 4 for a 6/6 giant with trample. Enters the battlefield. You search your library for 2 land cards, put them into the play tapped, and then it also does that whenever it attacks. Inferno Titan, same thing. Red 4, 6/6. This one has fire breathing. Whenever it attacks, you deal, or when it enters the battlefield, you deal 3 damage divided any way you choose. Frost Titan, 6/6 for blue 4. You have to pay 2 extra to target it with something. And then when it enters the battlefield, tap a permanent. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Grave Titan is a 6/6 Death Touch for black. I'm actually not looking these up. I actually just have them memorized. For a 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get 2 zombies.
Right.
And then Sun Titan is a 6/6 Vigilance for 6 white. So 6 total with white being 2 of them. It when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can search your graveyard for a card with a converted mana cost 3 or less, a permanent, with converted mana cost 3 or less, and put it onto the battlefield. So, these things work Magic.
Perhaps unsurprisingly.
No, it was a surprise to a lot of people. So Jund was a deck in Standard at the time, and people were saying things like, "Why would I ever play Grave Titan over Broodmate Dragon?" Broodmate Dragon was 3 black, red, green for a 4/4 dragon would enter the battlefield. It put a 4/4 into play with another 4/4 dragon, and people were like, "I'm never playing Grave Titan over this." Well, guess what? They were wrong. Grave Titan and Inferno Titan took those 2 slots.
I think with these, you're seeing the power of creatures that are good even against removal spells, right?
Well, it's things that do things, right?
Right. So when you're getting an extra effect, if I play Primeval Titan and they Doomblade it, well,
they're dead.
That just cast Doomblade, but I got a free explosive vegetation out of it.
I mean,
right?
better than that. It grabbed Volpits and
Sure, but I mean, at its most basic level,
right?
Even if you're not getting any extra benefit, even if you're just playing this in a deck with all basic lands, even when they kill it, you still kept a 4-mana spell essentially.
Yeah, and it's kind of huge. I mean, you're just equal in mana, right? You got explosive vegetation and their 2 mana in a card.
Right. So they're really losing a lot of tempo.
And the thing is like the biggest offender of this is all time is probably actually not the Titans. The Titans did get that argument. They were like, "Oh, Titans died to Doomblade. You can't play them." Like, you realize Terminate was a card then?
Sure.
People had Terminate. The card literally kills anything. But like, I don't know if you played with it. Do you know what Baneslayer Angel does, Michael?
I believe I do. It's 3 white for a 5/5 flying lifelink, and I forget the rest of it.
First strike.
Oh, okay. Yep, I'm just underselling things everywhere.
And protection from demons and dragons. I don't know why it has that.
Just in case.
But this card was told, "Oh, it's not playable. It dies to Doomblade." I would give anything for this card. I think this card might not be as good as Avacyn. This card might be Avacyn's not as good as this card.
Maybe.
It's not as good as this card.
No, you don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, what you really want is both of them, right? So when your opponent tells you it's bad and it dies to Doomblade, you can say, "Not anymore."
I mean, that seems powerful. But like, the point is like, all of these cards are insane. There's a reason that the Titans cost 6 mana. There's a reason Worldbreaker and Dragonlord Atarka and Ulamog cost as much mana as they do. It's because they're so powerful.
Right.
So like, obviously, it feels bad when you spend all of that mana, make this huge investment, and then somebody spends 2 mana to kill it. It sucks when you do that with a Goblin Dark Dwellers. It sucks when you do that with a Kalitas. But that's why you play the game differently. That's why you don't cast your Kalitas on 4. That's why you don't just cast Goblin Dark Dwellers without something to flash back with it. That's why you don't just, like, make a 9/9 Hangerback Walker. Like, I mean,
sure. Like, it depends. I find this a lot with counterspells too, sort of in the same vein. If your opponent is holding up a counterspell.
Can you imagine if that was the argument? You can't play it because it gets countered?
It's the same argument.
It is, but nobody would say that.
Well, right. That's, yeah.
I hope not, anyway.
I mean, I think ultimately what it does is it gives you something more, another thing you can take advantage of in gameplay, right? Another place you can gain an edge over your opponent is having a better understanding of. So if I cast this on 6, am I just going to die if it gets Doombladed? Well, then maybe I need to find a path, or at least try to find a path that isn't going to get me killed by, a single Doomblade.
Right. And that's what's important. It's like, how does this format, what's the puzzle here? And for a lot of it, it's playing things like Goblin Dark Dwellers. It's like, all right, cool, Reflector Mage this.
Right, yeah, I've certainly had that experience a couple of times. Do you even want to Reflector Mage a Goblin Dark Dwellers?
Probably
kind
not.
Kind of awkward. I mean, you do sometimes, but you're almost never happy about it.
I think that what's important to note is that a format is a fluid thing, and that cards are not actually in a vacuum. This is what makes Magic beautiful. So, Michael, how do you personally get over that kind of closed-minded approach in like where you're not thinking about the fact that everything dies to Declaration Stone because it actually just kills everything?
So, generally, like when I'm trying to prepare for an event or do testing, I'm trying to think about cards in the context of the decks that they're played in. So, Declaration in Stone feels a lot different coming out of like humans than it would coming out of a big white style mid-range deck than it would coming out of I don't know that there are a lot of people playing Declaration in Stone and control decks, but it feels different depending on what deck it's coming out of. So you might say that everything dies to Doomblade or dies to Declaration in Stone, and that's bad.
Or gets
The
bounced by
humans
Reflector
deck
Mage.
is going to burn its Declaration in Stone on the first creature you play, basically.
Right.
Right. I mean, if Primeval Titan or whatever card you're wanting to cast is the third creature you've played over the course of a game, it's never going to get Declaration in Stone except off the top because they simply can't afford to hold Declaration in Stone for those creatures. It's just never going to happen.
Which is why a lot of people thought that you couldn't place. I mean, in case anyone's wondering, Ramp came in really high on this. It came in higher than even Bant Company did. Like Ramp did really well.
But that's because Declaration in Stone isn't really good against Ramp. I mean,
right. But
I'm not saying you like side it out, but a lot of the time, you don't want to like mulligan to your Declaration in Stones against a Chandra deck, right?
Right. That's the thing is like how do you solve the problem to the fact that Worldbreaker does die to Declaration? You probably have to play more Atarkas and more Chandras, and like that's just something that you solve. That's
sure. One interesting thing we've seen in this format out of humans decks is diversity in 1-drops. I mean, especially in the early weeks, you would frequently see the mono white versions on no more than like trying to spread out the 1-drops as much as possible.
Yeah, never having like any 4-ofs.
Well, or you have some, but less than you would if Declaration in Stone wasn't a card. So, I think ultimately you just have to look at these cards and say, are they occasionally going to get you? Yes, but sometimes they're not going to have it, or it just won't matter as much as you think it will, right? I mean, if you Declaration in Stone a World Breaker and I untap and play another one, does it really matter that the first one got declarationed?
Not really. And I think that's what's important is that at the end of the day, you have to make it. You can't just give up on everything because every card dies to something. I mean, like we said, if the argument was that card gets countered, there wouldn't be very many playable Magic cards.
Well,
it would be 1-drops,
right?
And then cards that say they can't be countered.
But this also comes down to sometimes like if your opponent has played like they have an instant speed removal spell. If they keep leaving up Ultimate Price or Grasp of Darkness, maybe it's better to play Secure the Wastes than Avacyn. Right? I mean, one of the things you can do is use these cards against your opponent a little bit.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to force them to either hold mana or spend it inefficiently or remove your creatures in a bad order for them. Maybe you really need the Kalitas in your hand to stick, so you run out of Goblin Dark Dwellers knowing that it's likely going to die. Or you really need Kalitas to stick, so you play a Jace the turn before, and it eats, their Declaration in Stone or whatever, or Ruinous Path or whatever.
Right.
I think a lot of it comes down to avoiding the scenarios. You can play the game in such a way that frequently the worst case scenarios that you're imagining when you're talking about cards not being playable or really being reduced in utility because of this card just don't come up that often.
Yeah, to kind of put a bow on this and wrap this up, it's like Mike said earlier. You're going to get an advantage from not thinking about things this way. That advantage is going to be that you're thinking about them in the not it dies to Doomblade way, but how do I play around the Doomblade way? How do I play around the Declaration Stone? How do I play around this? And if you solve that puzzle, you gain an early advantage. And that's half the battle. Knowing is half the battle. So... No, and the other advantage you get, in all honesty, is you're going to be better at evaluating cards for it. So,
and I mean, it is true. There is sort of a vanilla test, right? I mean, how big would a card have to be at 5 mana with no other abilities for you to want to play it?
Right.
Right. I mean, I think that sort of speaks more to Doomblade being a card than saying that all these cards are unplayable.
Right.
Right. I mean, you want your cards to have the ability to do something in the face of a removal spell, but also understanding that you have a lot of control over how your opponent is able to play removal spells against you.
Yep. So
Sandbagging Kalitas, you can follow it up with a Fiery Impulse or Ultimate Price, can really impact. Your opponent may have a removal spell, but if you're going to get a zombie and kill one of their guys out of it, it looks a lot better than if you slam Kalitas on 4 and they untap and kill it.
Exactly. All right, that's it for this week. Let's move on to the end of the show. Clan, don't forget to share the clan on MTGO. You can message me at Spencer13Dev. I'd be happy to add you. I'm on there quite a bit now. Been playing a lot of Moto, so just add me and I'll add you to the clan. Or message me. Don't add. I mean, you can add me. You can add me. I don't care. But you should message me if you want to join the clan. Actually, I'd love it if you add me. That's great. I'm just talking in circles here. Don't forget to share the sponsor, mtgoasis.com. Great place to buy Magic cards. Actually, just the best place. Like, you shouldn't shop anywhere else. I'm not just saying that. Like, I actually believe that. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. Our next page. Oh man, what is our next Patreon goal?
I think it's a ways away now. But I'm really excited to get to make more content.
I did delete one of them, as I said that I was going to. The next one's at $400, and we will launch Brewing After Brews, which is a video series where 2 of the hosts sit down, right in front. It's kind of like a spin-off of Wine About It, but Magic related. So basically, we'll get drunk on camera and then brew decks and then play them against each other.
It's gonna be my girlfriend's favorite segment.
Yeah, I mean it's a video series that everybody should love. But if you love Wine About It I've watched Casey and Manny get real drunk, and it's quite entertaining.
But we have some other cool stuff in the pipeline as well. I think overall we have some really good ideas for content coming up.
In all honesty, there will probably be more goals that we will hit between here and $400. But that's currently what's on the list for the next goal. Where can people find you, Hindi?
You can find me in the Facebook group, Michael Hinderocker. Feel free to send me a message on Facebook, add me as a friend, or just tag me in a post in the group, and I'll do my best to respond. You can also find me on Twitter at mhindy, which is MH1NDY.
I did just find that at Magic Mike MTG is not taken.
So what you're saying is I need a username change?
I'm just
Thanks
saying.
for checking, Spencer.
Just saying. In case you were wondering.
I mean, I wasn't before, but...
You can find the show at CCMTG on Twitter and at constructivecriticism.com. OasisGamesLC.com should be up soon, hopefully. But you can also check it out on YouTube at youtube.com. Just look for Constructive Criticism. Awesome channel. We have Deck Text, the podcast. Sometimes I do a blog on there. Testing videos every week with me and Matt Kling. It's a great place to just... If your friends are always saying, I don't like podcasts, I like watching videos, shoot them there. Like, it's good quality content. It's players that have, I been on the Pro Tour. Like, we're obviously not Paulo and Owen, but we can sling cards.
I mean, we can change our names to be Paulo and Owen.
No. We actually asked Paulo on the first episode that he was on this show. I asked him, I was like, if Doritos paid you to change your name to Pablo Doritos, would you do it? And he said, no. Snap no.
He said no.
And then he was like, wait, Doritos has a lot of money. How much are they paying me?
Man, get me a Doritos jersey and I'll wear it to every PPTQ I play in.
What? You can find me on Twitter at Spencer13H. You can find me on Facebook at Spencer Stephen Howland. You can follow the podcast and everything Constructive Criticism at the Constructive Criticism Facebook group. There's a subreddit that I've literally checked since I made it. It's Reddit/CCMTG or something. But yeah, check us out on all those places. Hashtag Would That Be Good is our Twitter outreach program. Every week on the show, we look up the tweets for hashtag Would That Be Good and read them on the show. Starting with May 4th, we have, at least I think so. No, I think it's before that. I think it's actually May 2nd, which was Casey saying, just played a match of Magic better than I have in a long time. Hashtag would it be good? Hashtag back and ready to attack.
Which, I mean, that's a great hashtag.
I'm probably going to have to make these shirts because it sounds like people want them. At Red Deck Winning, Goggles Land Destruction, hashtag would it be good? Quentin actually talked about this. I actually do think it would be good.
I think it could be good out of the board.
Yeah.
I doubt it's something you want in the main deck, but I could
got
imagine a matchup
got
for
by that. In a match on Moto, he crumbled,
Not crumbled to
to
dust.
dust me, and then he did another 4-drop one where he hit two lands, and I was like, well, I lose. Like,
yeah, seems strong.
There's no coming back from this. Happy Star Wars Day, everyone. Hashtag Star Wars Day. Hashtag May the 4th be with you. Hashtag would it be good? Of course it's good. Like, obviously. I love Star Wars, and Michael doesn't, so you should all just not like him.
That's not true. I just don't go out of my way to watch it on May 4th.
I mean, why? Why do you hate Star Wars?
All right. You can tell me I hate Star Wars. You can hate tweet me about it. It's okay.
Vinny Gorman says, watching The Force Awakens for the first time on May the 4th. Hashtag would that be good? Hashtag it was good. Hashtag Star Wars.
I mean, can you really tweet would that be good? Hashtag it was good? Sounds like there's nothing for us to say.
I mean, have you seen The Force Awakens?
I have.
Was it good?
Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. Patrick says, I heart Casey Bloodworth talking about banning Sensei's counterbalance over top. That has been my argument forever. Thank you for being a reasonable human. Hashtag would that be good? I think that we all agreed that was a good argument.
Yeah, I agree. But,
like,
I mean, Casey probably is the most reasonable human out of all of us, so...
That's not true.
I'm not disagreeing.
That's definitely not true. That's easily you. Rise from the Tides in Season Pass plus negates in the board. Hashtag would that be good? Hashtag 12 Zombie Go?
Yeah, he's making 12 zombies
That's,
with Rise from the Tides.
That's pretty great.
Oh.
I
I'm pretty sure I said that once and got shouted down for it, so I think only I'm allowed to say that would be good.
Current deck idea: Naya Eldrazi, Brood Displacer combo with Nihiri, Filtering Ramp, Tutoring combo / alt finisher. Hashtag would it be good? Jenkins, you do you, man. Like, you and Scott have the best. Like, I want to know how often Scott and Jenkins actually play the things that they tweet.
I mean, if we're talking about Jenkins, I'm pretty sure the answer is never.
All right. Guess Soren and Black White Control is hashtag always improving. AC CMTG, GP Nordic Champion, hashtag Team Soren is good. More Sorens in the top 8. Hashtag let it be good. Wow, like just getting right into the issue here.
Hashtag sick rubbins.
Like I guess like it did something. I don't know. I think that like Soren's like I have gone from believing the card was unplayable to thinking it's a fine 2 of, maybe a fine 1 of.
Yeah, I mean it's not bad. It's not that exciting, but it doesn't seem bad.
Yeah, I do want to note that he like chose to play both 3. Like there are 2 other Planeswalkers in his deck that he played more of than that. The interesting one is definitely the 2 Hollowed Moonlights, by the way.
Just the main deck?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he got so many people with that.
Just like Hollowed Moonlight.
Nice Secure the Waste.
Dum.
Nice Collected Company. Not.
All right. That is it for this week, everybody. And we will see you all next week. And for the patrons, we will see you guys all as soon as I'm done editing the special cast. Actually, I don't know that I'm even going to edit that. Just throw it out. Just going to go ham. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and enjoy your weekend.
Magic, magic, magic.